You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth.
I want the people to know that they still have 2 out of 3 branches of the government working for them, and that ain't bad.
White, red, black, and yellow or pale. Now, if you combine these colors, white, red, and black, as a result, you have the 4th color, pale. Amazing. Even chemistry will give the evidence of the connection of this program of the Antichrist. Listen well. Of these judgments of God upon the life of those who betrayed Christ and pervert his gospel. This white, the papacy, the Pope; red, the communist power. Why? There is only one red flag, always been, and even before the Jesuit order was established, that red color was typical of the authority, along with the purple, of the authority of popes, from cardinals up. Already the 2 colors were being seen, but only in the person of the Pope, the colors of red and scarlet and purple, I will say, then they were combined. And here we have red. There is a flag that was established by the Jesuits himself as part of that liturgical symbol within the institution. They brought out that symbol out for the creation of a political ideology. Before communism, red always was an international symbol of different ideologies. Among others, you have socialism. Among others, you have then later fascism. After communism, of course. But today, now, and will be until the Lord come, that red flag is the international flag of the international communism. Wherever you go, in any communist country, that flag will be the international symbol of the forces of communism. Solid red. Now we will study the commissions later, but let's go on with the colors. Then you have black, and there is only one flag that is solid black. There is only one. Those who study this booklet here, they could see that under the oath and induction, when this ceremony is taking place for a Jesuit to swear under oath and induction, there is a flag there, and that flag is black, solid black, with a red skeleton on it and a knife. That has been from the time of Ignacio de Loyola the flag of the Jesuit order. As a matter of fact, is a secret flag. Now, who was waving that flag before? That was the Illuminati established by Ignacio de Loyola. He did not invent the flag by the time he established the Jesuit order. He brought it from the Illuminati that he established 28 years before, 1541, when he established the Jesuit order, or when at least he presented to Pope Paul III his constitutions of the Jesuit order. Now listen to this, the 4th color, and that was a pale color, a pale horse. Now combine these 2 colors and see what you come out with. White at the beginning, the white horse, and then your pale horse, the 4th horse. Combine these 2 colors. If you could have colors that could combine, not combine, but just put them together. Here, next, one to the other. Pale and white. And what flag you have? What flag do you have that combine these 2 colors? Is only one flag in the entire world, and only for 1600 years that flag has waved. And now today, more than ever before, that flag is waving where never was allowed to wave. Never. even in this country. You have seen that flag to be known to the millions and millions of America at least twice in the history of this country and the streets of this country, and 2 visits of 2 popes. That is the flag of the Vatican. It is in the United Nations right now. Among all the flags of the world, there's no one that can even come similar to this one, pale and white.
Out of these troubled times, our 5th objective, a new world order can emerge, a new era, freer from the threat of terror, stronger in the pursuit of justice, and more secure in the quest for peace. An era in which the nations of the world, East and West, North and South, can prosper and live in harmony. 100 generations have searched for this elusive path to peace, while 1,000 wars raged across the span of human endeavor. And today that new world is struggling to be born. A world quite different from the one we've known. A world where the rule of law supplants the rule of the jungle. A world in which nations recognize the shared responsibility for freedom and justice. A world where the strong respect the rights of the weak. We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order. A world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders. What is at stake is more than one small country. It is a big idea, a new world order, where diverse nations are drawn together in common cause to achieve the universal aspirations of mankind: peace and security, freedom, and the rule of law. Such is a world worthy of our struggle and worthy of our children's future. And now we can see a new world coming into view. A world in which there is the very real prospect of a new world order. In the words of Winston Churchill, a world order in which the principles of justice and fair play protect the weak against the strong. A world where the United Nations, freed from Cold War stalemate, is poised to fulfill the historic vision of its founders. And that's why I wanted to speak to you today about the new world taking shape around us, about the prospects for a new world order now within our reach. In the coming weeks, I'll be talking in some detail about the possibility of a new world order emerging after the Cold War. But today, I want to discuss another aspect of that order. You see, as the Cold War drew to an end, we saw the possibilities of a new order in which nations work together. It refers to new ways of working with other nations to deter aggression and to achieve stability. As old threats recede, new threats emerge. The quest for the new world order is in part a challenge to keep the dangers of disorder at bay. We must build on the successes of Desert Storm to give new shape and momentum to this new world order. Only when this transformation is complete will we be able to take full measure of the opportunities presented by this new and evolving world order. The new world order really is a tool for addressing a new world of possibilities. This order gains its mission and shape not just from shared interests, but from shared ideals.
The President George Bush has talked time and time again about the new world order, and this is the best chance to begin to establish the new world order. And that's why the stakes are so high.
From 1945 and the end of the war through 1989 and the end of the Cold War, we had a worldview. Republican and Democratic presidents alike, from Harry Truman to George Bush, stood for freedom and stood for certain propositions that would make America strong and healthy and grow the middle class and shrink poverty and stand against communism. And after 1989, President Bush said, and it's a phrase that I often use myself, that we needed a new world order, and instead it looks like we got a lot of disorder. We still, and after 9/11, we've been more sensitive.
But it is the awareness itself that will drive the change, and one of the ways it will drive the change is through global governance and global agreements.
Now, much has been said by the Secretary of State and others about a new world order, about a defining moment in history. I have no doubt about the potential of this moment to be defining in terms of history, but that definition can be negative as well as positive. And how negative or positive it will be will depend on what kind of new world order we really create. Can it truly be said that the United States of America, trading off better treatment to China for an abstention on a vote, cozying up to Syria with its record of support for terrorism, or making promises to other countries in exchange for a hold your coat, you go ahead and take the risks and casualties endorsement, can it truly be said that these create a new world order? Can it really be said that we're building a new world order when it's almost exclusively the United States who will be fighting in the desert? Not alone, but almost. Displaying pride and impatience and implementing what essentially amounts to a Pax Americana. Is that a new world order? Can it really be said that this is a true new world order when it lacks a true United Nations collective security effort with the full measure of international cooperation and burden sharing which that should carry?
With the end of the Cold War, Henry Kissinger pointed out in his superb book on diplomacy, he said, "None of the most important countries which must build a new world order have had any experience with the multi-state system that is emerging. Never before has a new world order had to be assembled from so many different perceptions or on so global a scale. Nor has any previous order had to combine the attributes of the historic balance of power system with global democratic opinion and the exploding technology of the contemporary period." That was written in 1994, and it may be even more relevant today.
As I've told you before, because I love it so much, they also created the Great Seal of the United States. And that Great Seal of the United States has on it, Novus Order Seclorum, a new order for the centuries, for the ages, forever.
There is a chance for the President of the United States to use this disaster to carry out what his father, a phrase his father used, I think, only once, and hasn't been used since, and that is a new world order.
During the conflict with Saddam Hussein, which he handled so superbly in a short-term sense, but he kept talking about a new world order. And then President Bush, at the end of that war, promised he would give 4 graduation addresses, 4 commencement addresses, describing that new world order and what America's role was going to be in it. Turned out he gave one of those addresses and canceled the other 3 and talked about something else. That's why, because they weren't.
And this present window of opportunity, during which a truly peaceful and interdependent world order might be built, will not be here for too long.
You believe deeply in your system, and we believe just as deeply in our system. It is not our common beliefs that have brought us together here, but our common interests and our common hopes. The interest that each of us has to maintain our independence and the security of our peoples, and the hope that each of us has to build a new world order in which nations and peoples with different systems and different values can live together in peace, respecting one another while disagreeing with one another, letting history rather than the battlefield be the judge.
It's past the point of talking. We know historically that the global governance, the sort of agenda to these issues is very hard to try and, with all the best intentions, it's very hard to actually activate. We're seeing that right now. We're seeing a lot of fragmentation going on in Copenhagen, a lot of different agendas pulling in different directions. And
the closest we came to the dream was when we were doing THX and everybody was writing their scripts. Everybody was hanging out at the pool table drinking cappuccinos and waxing philosophically about the New World Order and everything.
Type 1 civilization is a connected civilization, a single global culture, a single global language, global communication, global politics. We see this beginning now. We see it emerging all around us. The European countries are binding together slowly, forming the EU. NAFTA has been formed in North America. Eventually, we will see the rise of a single world government. We will see a single economy.
2009 is also the first year of global governance, with the establishment of the G20 in the middle of the financial crisis. The climate conference in Copenhagen is another step towards the global management of our planet. Our mission, our presidency, is one of hope, supported by acts and by deeds.
Leaders come together and establish a framework for global governance, not a world government, but sensible governance. These measures are enacted and we continue to move forward with the G20 process. We will have the kind of global governance that is necessary to ensure the stability and transparency of markets in a way that gives us the benefits of a globalized market economy without the enormous risks that...
Standing there with my people, they were bombed, and I was just targeted like them, and as elected president, official in charge of their protection, I couldn't do anything about it. But the point here is, it's not about me, it's about the idea of freedom. It's about the future of the whole region. It's about the future of Europe and a new world order.
The transatlantic partnership was never just the foundation of our security. It was the foundation of our way of life. It was forged in experience of the most bitter and anguished kind. Out of it came a new Europe, a new world order, a new consensus.
The elite, those few privileged men who feel it is within their power to hold the world in the palm of their hand. They comprise the heads of what we now call the New World Order. These individuals have a quaint thirst for power, control, and domination. They flaunt their plans within their intellectual circles, with an arrogance that the, quote, have-nots of society do not have the capacity to understand their plans. One of these individuals is famed author and British intelligence officer H.G. Wells. In 1940, he wrote a book conveniently titled The New World Order. In it, he prescribed what the upper echelon of society must do to obtain world peace and keep the common man, quote, satisfied enough to prevent future rebellion. In this video, I've broken down Mr. Wells's thoughts on obtaining the New World Order into 9 segments. What is so interesting about these 9 segments is that we're seeing them executed at a furious pace just within the last 5 years. Number 1. The leaders, intellectual men. Mr. Wells states, the New World Order cannot be brought into existence without a gigantic and more or less coordinated effort of the saner and abler elements in the human population. The first thing one must understand is that an elite group of men scheming the fate of humanity is not some conspiracy. There is, in fact, a well-coordinated effort of world leaders, businessmen, religious leaders, and philanthropists who are involved in this effort. The now late David Rockefeller has explicitly stated in his memoirs that he stands guilty and is proud of being a part of a secret cabal conspiring with other internationalists for a new world order. Number 2. Depopulation and elitism. Wells says the have-nots have never produced the intelligence and the ability, and the haves have never produced the conscience. Nevertheless, because of the continually increasing efficacy of productive methods, the relative pressure of this new unemployed class increases, and this modernized excess population no longer has any social humility. Let that sink in a moment as he refers to you as, quote, excess population that has never produced the intelligence or ability to lead yourselves. Wells, and several other like him, feel as though overpopulation is a negative side effect of the enhancements of technology.
Unless nations will agree to work together to tackle these cross-border challenges posed by population growth, overconsumption of resources, and environmental degradation, the prospects for a decent life on our planet will be threatened.
Number 3. Abolish borders. We should still be confronted with the essential riddle, which is the abolition of boundaries of most existing sovereign states and their merger in some larger pacts. We have to do that if any supportable life is to flourish. Do you really think Germany, Sweden, the US, and so many other Western countries are simply making a mistake by having very gratuitous open border policy? Do you really think the open border policy is for human rights? Think again. The uncontrolled open border policy is by design, in order to further deconstruct sovereign states. Number 4. Abolish governments. But many of us are coming to realize that all existing governments have to go into the melting pot. We believe that it is a world revolution which is upon us, and that in that great struggle to evoke a westernized world socialism.
He said, I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we got a good military and we can take down governments. And he said, I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail. This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran.
Make no mistake, there is a reason governments worldwide are falling to war, civil war, military coups, populist movements, and financial insolvency. It is simply part of the broader plan to deconstruct the current order in order to bring in the new world order. Number 5. Leave room for nature. Wells states that the world growth is simply devastating the planet, and that something must be done to protect the one Earth we live on. The elite do love nature and do in fact want to protect it, for why would they want the people they despise to ruin the planet for them? However, they have also used conservation efforts to unite people closer to their global agenda, as we've seen with the Paris COP21 conference, the largest agreement with 196 nations signing off. We see this environmental strategy time and time again with the global warming agenda and the obvious Georgia Guidestone statements. Number 6. World Banking System. Wells states that under the political federation, we have to realize without a concurrent economic collectivization is bound to fail. So it is plain that the federal union, a common money, means an identical economic life throughout the union. Yes, the global stock market, bond, and currency collapse is coming, and it will make way for the one world currency. Although several experts say that this should have happened sometime between 2014 and 2016, I'm seeing more and more conservative voices that are concerned that it will without a doubt happen between 2017 and 2018.
With the bubbles that you mentioned, and then we'll go through deflation. So when you say we need to reset the world economy, how do you do that?
Okay. I think the reset is on multiple fronts. Number one, the financial sector.
Number 7. Re-education. Wells says the distribution of this essential conception one may call propaganda, but in reality it is education. Wells calls for the youth to be indoctrinated with a new one world order mentality. And sure enough, this is what we're seeing in our public education system, not to mention our extreme liberal colleges.
But freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same.
Number 8. Populist movements. Wells says world peace means all that much revolution. More and more of us begin to realize that it cannot mean less. The reorganization of the world has at first to be mainly the work of a, quote, movement, or a party, or a religion, or cult, whatever we choose to call it. It will not be a close-knit organization, towing on the party line and so forth. It may be a very loose-knit and many-faceted, but if a sufficient number of minds throughout the world, irrespective of race, origin, or economic and social habituations, give in, well then they've met their goal. Sound familiar? Indeed, what Wells is talking about here is the rise of populist movements, having a left versus right paradigm of large, loose, assimilatory masses of people that are willing to go toe-to-toe in revolution against one another. And last, but certainly not least, number 9, shock troops of the NWO. Pay very close attention to what H.G. Wells says in this paragraph. The eager and adventurous unemployed young are indeed the shock troops in the destruction of the old social order everywhere. They will find guidance in some confident party or some inspired champion who organizes them for revolutionary or counter-revolutionary ends. It scarcely matters which. The essence is the combination of energy, frustration, and discontent. So, you thought that your first worry would be martial law through the military and police. Think again. The elite want to use the common man against one another. Whether you are on the right or on the left, the elite wants you to fight amongst yourselves so they can clean up the rest. And if you've been paying attention in the news, America is falling right into that trap, with Americans being divided almost across every social, economic, and political issue. So, what are we to do in this situation? To me, the writings of H.G. Wells seem to be very much like a blueprint of what is going on in today's world. Additionally, I feel we are nearing the climax of their efforts. With those who have eyes to see and ears to hear, you'll recognize that there are some extreme parallels with what is happening in our world and that with which is stated in Bible prophecy. My advice to you, get prepared physically by acquiring hard assets and getting in shape. Get prepared mentally by acquiring knowledge of how to be a producer. And most importantly, get prepared spiritually. If you have been seeking for answers in this world full of lies and have not come to know Jesus Christ as your Savior, please submit to Him and ask for His forgiveness. If you have been saved, get in a group of like-minded Christians, as the events to come will be a snare on your faith. This is Mike with On Point Preparedness. God bless.
Now what you're looking at right here, this is the Supreme Court building in Israel. And as you can see right there over on the left, that's an Illuminati pyramid with the sun symbol or the eye right there at the very top. It's a very common symbol that we all associate with the Illuminati or the beast system, if you will. And here we find it on top of Israel's Supreme Court building. It's important to understand that the same families who own and control the Federal Reserve and other major financial institutions have their eyes set on the Temple Mount and the holy city of Jerusalem. Just as the scriptures say, there's a man who will be revealed as the Antichrist, and he will sit there before the appearance of the Jewish Messiah, and many will receive him as their Messiah. And speaking of that, I've actually covered Dig, the TV series, in a few other videos, but it actually just concluded recently. But that right there was the whole idea behind this TV series, Dig. It was about establishing the Jewish Messiah. It was about these rituals they were doing at the Temple Mount to usher this in. They were performing these rituals at the temple that would essentially be Armageddon, the end of the world, and that would offer them the chance to bring in this Jewish Messiah. Even in the TV show, it was all about blood sacrifice. They were going to sacrifice this red heifer. As I said, I've covered that as well in some other videos. It's interesting to note, God wouldn't send men to that place anymore to perform blood sacrifices. His son's blood was the perfect sacrifice, so there's no need for us to shed the blood of dumb animals any longer. Yeshua did a perfect work, and remember, it was finished. What's kind of creepy and freaky about this is I do believe that the Antichrist, whenever it arrives on the national scene, it'll be accepted by most Christians as the Savior who can bring peace and safety, peace and order to the world. So ultimately, Jesus, Yeshua, will enter into that place, the holy mountain of God, and cleanse it. But before that happens, all hell is going to break loose in Jerusalem and the world. So with all that said, I want to explore a little bit more of this symbolism here at the Supreme Court. We'll even go inside some, and I just want to show you a few things. So this is a very, very touchy subject, and before I get into it, I just want to address a few things. It's not all the Jews, all right? I get this message on so many of my videos. It's like, why don't you ever talk about the Jews? It's the Jews, So much hatred for that entire race. Now, I refuse to do that. Because what a lot of people don't understand is that all religions are controlled by the devil. All religions are of the beast system. Islam has the cube. Many of us know about the cube and understand the symbolism there. The cube going back to Saturn or Saturnalia, or ultimately back to Satan. So a lot of layers to that particular onion right there. But once again, this is a religion that is controlled by the beast. Ultimately, even in America, if you look at most churches, because there's so many different denominations, right? All these different interpretations of God's word and what God's all about. Got all these buildings, but if you look at these buildings, and this is a typical example of most churches in America, if you look at these buildings, if you look right there in the lower left right there, they always have the pyramid with the sun in the middle, the sun symbol. This is why those lines are coming out. It's the illumination. Now, I'm not saying it's a bunch of Illuminati guys in black hoods, built these churches or whatever. This goes back to the connection with Freemasonry and religion. And that's all fine and good, and I wouldn't really have a personal issue with it if it wasn't for the fact that Freemasons take oaths of secrecy. So basically, whatever's happening in the church, or they're saying in the church, or saying in public, could be very different from what they're doing and saying and working on in private. But on the higher level of the pyramid, the higher level of the Freemason structure, it's definitely much darker up there. So these are examples of, once again, what I call that beast system. Remember, it is the enemy that is in control of all of these religions. We don't need religion. This is where it gets tricky. Now, that's not to say that the people that go to church or the people that go to synagogue or go to mosques or whatever are all evil and bad people either. These are the sheep. These are the little lambs. There are millions of people on this planet that are controlled by that beast system through their very religions. And this is regardless of what they hold in their hearts. There are really good people that fall for this stuff. I mean, I see it in my own family. I was one. I was raised in a church myself. I was one. I was raised in a church in the Midwest myself, and I'm glad I was. It gave me a really good understanding of the basics and the fundamentals of religion and whatnot, but it wasn't until I personally left the church and started researching for myself that I really started to connect with the very real spiritual battle that's taking place in our world all around us, and the insane grip that this beast system has on all of religion and on people's hearts and minds. And I'm not saying, don't go to church and this and that or the other. I mean, some people need that community. It's a good place to learn the basics and the fundamentals. I mean, the whole thing, right? It just didn't work for me. And I've been to pretty much every church you can imagine. I've got books on the Book of Mormon. I've got the English version of the Quran, Dianetics from L. Ron Hubbard, you name it. I mean, I've read about everything. I've been to a lot of different churches. I've mentioned in other videos I was actually in a bit of a cult in Maui. And there was no brainwashing, you know, they didn't get me an MK Ultra or anything like that, but the guy that ran it was a charismatic and really, really good with words, and it didn't take long for me to realize this guy was cuckoo. It took a few months. The point is, you know, we've all been deceived. We can all get pulled back into this beast system. So again, this is very touchy stuff, and I don't want anybody thinking this is anti-Semitic. Now, that's a big issue. This is what this Illuminati, if you will, these people at the top of the pyramid, have been hiding behind for decades now. Like, if you ever go against Israel or say anything against Israel, it's like automatically you're an anti-Semite. You know, you hate the Jews. That's all a psyop. It's social engineering. It's just a way to shut you down and keep your mouth shut. So once again, understand, I'm coming from a place of love. I see us all as brothers and sisters in Christ, whether people believe in that or not. That's how I see the world. The Supreme Court building sits on a plot of land next to the Foreign Ministry and the Central Bank of Israel. Now, it's important to note there's a lot of ley lines at play here as well. I'm not going to cover that so much here in this video. There's people out there that do really good work with that. There's a lot of things happening with the ley lines all around the Supreme Court as well. But that being said, it's important to understand that everything about this building has been thought out to the very finest detail. And I see it as absolutely diabolical. This is the devil's plan being put into place before we ever even realize it. The devil, knows its final battle will be here in Jerusalem. Now, if you're not familiar with the Rothschild family, please do a little research there. People always ask, who's the Illuminati? What do they look like? This is one of them. The Rothschild family is one of the Illuminati bloodline families. So it's interesting to note that the engineers who were chosen for this job by the Rothschilds were the grandson and granddaughter of a man who actually worked for Baron Rothschild. You also find their love of numerology all throughout this building and in the building process. It was important to the builder to have everything done according to the correct numbers. It's really interesting because all around the building you'll find these different pathways that you can walk through, and here's one right here. The larger circle you see at the bottom of the picture is actually an inverted cross, and this whole thing was designed for people to walk on. So this is actually a religious emblem placed there designed for people to trample on under their feet. So keeping in mind that we're approaching a one world religion, okay, this is what's coming. This will be the beast system fully revealed, the Antichrist system. So this is why we find all the world religions represented in one way or another. For instance, right here, just beyond that Egyptian obelisk, lies a Muslim gravesite. Another thing you'll find all throughout the building and even out in the courtyard are multiple Hindu altars. And just in case there's still any doubt that the Rothschilds are actually behind this, this is one of the placards you find on the wall. The founder of the Rothschild dynasty and his 5 sons established all the central banks throughout Europe. The Rothschilds made several stipulations with the Israeli government before building the Supreme Court. And among them were that the Rothschilds would pick the plot of land to build the Supreme Court, they would use their own architects, and no one would ever know how much the building actually cost. It took them 4 years to build this structure with many secrets built into it. As I said, every element of this building was built according to occult knowledge. This right here is a great example. You find it right here that when you first enter the building, you actually find yourself on the journey. This entire journey is intended to bring one from darkness into the light and become an illuminated one. As you see here, when you very first enter the building, it starts off with dim lighting, but as you look up the stairs, you see the bright light that comes from a very large window that looks over parts of Jerusalem. It's also very important to note these steps here. There are 3 sets of 10 steps, making a total of 30. Now, as you ascend these 30 steps, you come from the darkness into the light. And from here you can see the world, or in this case the city of Jerusalem, like you've never seen it before. It's also worth mentioning that right here on the right side you'll see the old Jerusalem stone. Some even believe these same stones were used in the Second Temple. And on the other side you'll see the smooth modern wall. There are 6 lampstands going up that speaks to the man on his journey to gain his knowledge and become illuminated. But once again, I think it's very important to note that the ones who built this building built it to be, in their eyes, perfect and in their order of things, even numerically. And even right here, this is where we start getting a little bit deeper, but when you leave the center courtroom or the main courtroom, The base of the stairs you walk down, as you descend, you'll find the fertility symbol right there in the very center, which is always present in any of these so-called Illuminati structures. It's often kind of hidden, but it's always there. The symbol there in the center represents the woman, and then the, of course, staff, or whatever you'd like to call that, going through the center is the penetration. And speaking of that sign of fertility, we find it once again here at Wasilla High School. They actually made the statue a few years back, and this is Sarah Palin's territory right here. Once again, they're telling us that this is all about the, quote, warrior from within. Once again, alluding to the, if you will, female sexual organs, these signs of fertility. These things are often connected as well to the whole idea of goddess worship, and I've covered that in a lot of videos as well. So at this point, the term Illuminati is basically a catch-all phrase for the beast system, or the Antichrist system to come, the New World Order. There's still a lot of people out there that make fun of this symbolism. I see it all the time. I see a lot of really dumbed down things like this. You see this all the time online. Illuminati confirmed, you know, pyramid, right? Well, I understand that. Now, there's different reasons why people do this. Some people just don't understand what's going on. I think other people probably see it, but it scares them. So they don't want to put stuff like this out, you know, laugh at it, make fun of it, right? What these people are representing is this. It's the same symbol that we find on top of the Israeli Supreme Court building. The all-seeing eye with the pyramid, the beast system, the coming Antichrist system of the one world order to follow. If you really want to wake somebody up out there, I think this is a great example right here. You can show them this pyramid with the sun symbol, or the all-seeing eye, on top of the Israeli Supreme Court. Show them all the other symbolism that's taking place inside this building and around it. Show them all these celebrities that are doing the same symbol. Show them the movies, the advertisements, the TV shows. It's everywhere. This is something I cover on this channel extensively.
Hi guys, this is Ed and welcome to The Outer Dark. Recently I was doing some research and I found a number of very strange things regarding the symbolism at the Pope's audience hall at the Vatican, and I found it really disturbing. In fact, there was one detail that really did blow my mind. Anyway, stay tuned as The Outer Dark brings you 5 dark things about Paul IV's audience hall. Number 5. First, some context. I am a Christian and I was baptized, and at one stage I was even an altar boy. I'm not knocking the Catholic faith or anything like that, but it is my duty to follow the breadcrumbs, no matter where they go, even if I don't like what I find. Anyway, what is the audience hall in question? Well, it's a building in the Vatican where the Pope himself holds audience. It's named after Pope Paul IV and has a seating capacity of 6,300. It's designed in reinforced concrete by an Italian architect and was completed in 1971. The architect in question is noted for building large reinforced concrete structures, the kind that's very strong and is the public equivalent of a super bunker. Number 4. I will be covering the audience hall in depth in a moment and what very well blew my mind about it. But until then, I want to go over something else. That is the major feature behind the Pope that features inside the audience hall, namely this. Have you seen this before? I'd never seen it before myself and felt like I had entered the realm of the Mandela effect once again, on overload this time, since this is the most ominous thing I've ever seen in a while. This artwork was placed within the hall in 1977, as history states, and depicts, according to the Vatican, the resurrection of Christ emerging from a nuclear apocalypse. Now think to yourself for a moment. The audience hall is a reinforced concrete bunker, and the depiction of Christ shares the same connections with Christ himself rising from an atomic apocalypse. Not only that, but many people have said this is the most un-Christian thing they have ever seen in a long time, even a number of Catholics I've talked to. For it looks like Christ's head is in fact missing, at least half of it. A number of Catholics don't even remember even seeing this before or looking at it, but it's been in the hall since, at least according to history, since 1977. The structure seems to have entered at least the internet's consciousness around 2012. I could find a couple of examples examples before that, but most seem to be post-2012, and there doesn't seem to be any pictures of it from the front. All seem to be taken from the side. Anyway, I just thought I'd share that because I found it really disturbing. Number 3. In order to understand what I'm going to show you about the audience hall, that is the following symbolism around the architecture, you have to understand a number of coarse conspiracies, most notably the work of researcher David Icke, at least the main theories he puts forward. For he states that there is an idea that the elites themselves rule through a secret bloodline within the global elite, and that there is an overriding superstructure of, well, alien influence, most notably reptilian. Number 2. I want to have a look very carefully at the inner architecture of the audience hall. I want you to look very carefully at this piece, this part of the architecture, and really just look at it. Now it's a circular eye-like architecture, and you can see there is almost a slit in it. It almost looks reptilian. Well, is your mind blowing yet? Probably not. You're probably laughing at me. Well, sorry, maybe I should take the photo from a different position. How about here? Now can you see it? This view is from the back of the hall. A view largely never taken, I might add, in any form. Maybe because if you see it on the front view, you can see this. Let me go through this in detail so you can see what I'm talking about. First, the eyes. Take a look. Now the scaly skin. Now the sharp teeth. Also note the pathway to the Pope himself and the fact that it resembles a snake's tongue or even a snake's tail. Now ask yourself this. Why is there a massive snake symbolism within the inner audience chamber of the Pope? Also note the architect who designed it. This project would have cost millions of dollars, and every design, everything you can think of, it's the job for the architect to entertain. They just don't design anything like this unless there is a reason behind it. So what is the snake a symbol of? Well, ask yourself that. What is the snake a symbol of within Christianity? Number 1. So what does this mean? Well, perhaps we need to go back to David Icke again. Let's go through David Icke's main hypothesis again. David Icke states that there's a global conspiracy where our very world is being ruled by reptilian aliens, that they rule this through control over bloodlines and vast amounts of other methods and resources. He states that the elites are not like us. They look like us, they act like us, but they're not like us. They are fundamentally different. They think different, and most importantly, they have different wants and needs, different desires. But at the end of the day, I'm just presenting what I find. It does not mean I'm right. Go out and do your own research, form your own conclusions, and come to your own opinions. These are just the dots I connect. I'm just an armchair researcher like a lot of people.